Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And greetings from snowy Southwest Virginia. It's the big snowmageddon. Now, by the time you get this podcast, it'll be way after the fact. It'll probably be midsummer or something. But just to let you know, it is incredibly snowy and cold here. I had to go out and get my NPR dressing gown because it's a little bit chillier in this room.
Yes, it is very cold. I also bought this hoodie that goes all the way to my ankles for Christmas, and I'm currently wearing it, and it's the warmest thing ever. But it has snowed off and on all day. We got it like an ice storm like a day ago, and we're supposed to get, I think, more ice tonight. So it's a little treacherous where we are.
Absolutely. Now, Joy sent me a picture earlier that she went out to a supermarket, to Food Lion, to buy some items, and I commented to her I'd rather eat cat food than get involved with that.
To be fair, though, I just sat in the car. But it was like right as the snow was hitting. So you know how that goes.
Yeah, people panic buying was it egg, not eggs, no, some milk and bread, isn't it?
Bread.
Isn't that what people buy?
Milk, bread, and eggs. You were right. It's all three usually, but milk and bread and then eggs is sometimes listed on that.
I mean, we don't buy a lot of either, just generally.
I mean, I have a loaf of bread that but it's like a loaf of bread. You don't eat a whole loaf of bread any given day, right, Tim? You're not going to go through it that quickly.
No.
Maybe there's some really big bread lovers out there. And then milk makes no sense because, as we've stated, if the electricity goes out and your refrigerator is off, your milk's just going to spoil anyway.
Well, you put it outside.
I know everybody says throw it outside, but in the case of like that, it doesn't make sense to me that that's your choice because you're taking a risk. It's milk. And what if you don't throw it outside? I don't know. It's just a weird choice. I feel like I would go for like pantry, like, you know what I mean? Like those kind of items if it was the end of the world, not milk.
I'd probably get canned food.
Yeah, I would probably, that's what I meant by pantry. Like I'd have like tuna, canned tuna, canned whatever, beans, rice. Because even if like the end times come and you can't necessarily boil, you can soak those things enough till they're edible. There, I've thought about this for a while. So milk makes no sense to me. I just don't like milk.
Yeah, welcome to the Prepper Pod, everybody.
This is like the second week in a row we've talked about this. Not sure what that's saying about the state of our world right now. Anyway, but yeah, that would be my choice at end times.
There we go. All right. Well, I'm glad we got that covered. If the apocalypse happens, I'll be walking to where you live, and then we can have some soaked rice together or something.
Anyway, all right, continue. I'll let Tim go into his music news to start us off with.
Okay, so I just have one item. This is something that came out today, and this apparently is a thing that Tom Petty said before he died, and it's only just making the light of day now. Now, apparently, Tom Petty was sort of a little cynical about a lot of these bands releasing greatest hits and best of and all that kind of stuff. And he
seems like he was cynical about a lot of things.
Yeah, and he did actually release a box set many years ago, which had a lot of B-sides and stuff that he did with Mudcrutch and, stuff that was previously unreleased. But, your general greatest hits album that a lot of the acts churn out one after the other after the other. He's a little cynical about that. And he approached his record company and apparently wanted to release a worst of album. He just wanted to really sort of find the worst stuff he'd ever done, unfinished stuff, demos, things that no one would ever listen to, and put it out. Tom Petty's worst of.
I mean, in some way, it would catch people's attention just because people are talking about it. So there's marketing there, but it is humorous. It seems a little, though, I don't know. It's kind of playing on like Yoko Ono level pretension. Do you know what I mean, Tim?
Exactly.
It seems a little pretentious for because it's kind of hard to make money in certain ways, especially with like physical media. So I understand why there's like box sets and things being regenerated over time.
That's true. I mean, I'm lucky that the last year, actually, I think it was last year or year before. Actually, I think maybe it was last year. Van Halen, or the Van Hagar years of Van Halen, released a nice box set where it was all remastered, and I bought the record version and the CD version, and there was a disc in there which had supposedly rare material in it. I mean, I had all that stuff anyway, but sometimes it hits the spot when you're a fan or a collector. And like way Brian May had been releasing these box sets, so he seems to have given up on that recently, to be fair. But sometimes it hits the spot with the collectors, but I think for the general audience, it's too much.
I mean, that makes sense. Well, and didn't you talk about like the Guns N' Roses one? You'd have to like sell your right kidney to get or something recently. Something with Axl Rose, right?
Yeah, it was a ridiculous amount of money for not a lot of content. Then you compared it to the Metallica Black Album box set, which was about the same price, and it had 7 vinyl records in it, and 30 CDs, and 2 DVDs, and a Blu-ray, and a
Oh,
book, and a
that's
thing.
what it was.
And it was
You said on air, Axl Rose better be hand delivering that to my house.
yeah. Well, the Metallica set was actually pretty good value for money for what you'd pay, but the Guns N' Roses set was incredibly poor value for money.
Yeah, I just remember why it came to mind like that. 'Cause Tim was like, if I pay that much money for this box set, Axl Rose better be hand delivering it to my house.
Well, there was a Kiss set called the Vault, which was a load of stuff with unreleased demos, acetates, personal items, all kinds of stuff. And it came in a safe, and it was ridiculously expensive, in the tens of thousands of dollars type idea. But when you bought it, Gene Simmons would deliver it to your house.
Oh, okay. So that's probably where the joke came from.
Yeah.
But to be fair, that's what I mean, at least with Kiss, though, that you kind of know what you're getting. That's like their thing. They don't shy away from that. They're a spectacle. And you know what I mean, Tim? They're going to be selling merch, and it's probably going to be expensive and collective and things of that nature.
Absolutely. They are a money-making enterprise first and foremost, and a band second.
I'd rather you just be upfront about it. Some of the other ones try to hide.
Yeah, no, they're very clear about that. I mean, like the last few tours that Kiss did, all the instruments on stage are for sale. So they'd finish a gig, and then on Paul's website, you could buy the guitar he played at a certain venue, and that was a new revenue stream they came up with.
Got to make money somewhere, I guess.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I have a little bit of music news I will start with. And you may have seen this, Tim, but Joe Biden recently was doing the Presidential Medals of Freedom. And Bono from U2 was actually presented today, I think is what it was released, or yesterday, actually. He was presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Well, that's cool. And now, what's interesting with that, like in the UK, if you're not a British citizen, you can't be a Sir, you can't be knighted, you can't have an OBE or a CBE. But here, you can win the Presidential Medal of Freedom if you're not a US citizen.
I've always thought that's why when you told me like the OBE and stuff, you had to be, I was kind of surprised by that because I was thinking things like my equivalent in America is the Presidential Medal of Freedom, or maybe the Kennedy Center Honors, things like that. You know what I mean? And so I was like, I've watched plenty of people who weren't American born win on all of those shows. So it was weird. Well, not really a win, but you know what I'm saying.
It's not a reality show.
I don't know why I said like they won the Masked Singer. America. Everything's a spectacle, but not quite that bad. But some of the other winners were Michael J. Fox, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Denzel Washington, and the front. Honestly, Bono put out a little thing, and he basically said that most of the time showmen aren't supposed to be humble, but for today I am, or something like that, and that was honor of him winning.
Well, there we are.
So thought that was interesting. And there's a whole slew. Just Google it. You can see quite a few people get honored. I guess I find it weird that it's just randomly on a Saturday at the beginning of January. I don't know why that's
I mean, we're not going to get political on this podcast, but a new administration is coming in, and they want to maybe just tie all the things up, and the people that they want to honor,
that's a good point.
They want to get it done, and maybe there's only a certain window that you can do it and get the people to be available and stuff like that.
Fair enough. All right. Well, it is my topic. And so I was going to go ahead and jump into it. I was thinking, we make jokes about how many songs out there are just 4 chords. Like that's like a common joke. They're like, and when you start playing an instrument like the guitar, the ukulele, or I don't know, just anything with basic chord progressions, they always say you can learn so many songs if you just learn these 4 chords, right, Tim? F, C, G, A minor, usually a lot, things like that. And so I went through and I used the powers of the internet, and I found about 35 songs that are these 4 chords. Now, I don't mean they are only G, C, F, A minor. That's just an example. They all have this like a basic chord progression. That's 4 chords. And then I got a little bit of music facts about each song. I figured it would create some buzz for me and Tim to talk about. So with that being said, Tim, when you think of music and you think of four chords, how many songs do you think you just come up with off the top of your head?
Oh, so many because like your rock and roll 1-4-5 progression is only three chords, and that accounts for thousands and thousands of songs.
Sweet Home Alabama. If you're looking for an example, because it's only three chords. So there you go, everybody. And that's why I feel like that one like drives me insane because that was like everybody's practice song, Tim. And so like when I was stuck around a bunch of people, like when we were do like what we called Hell Week for like musical theater where you're doing all your sound checks and you'd be stuck around a lot of people who were really into music or you're in show choir and you're stuck around a lot of people that it would just be those three chords. And I think that's why Sweet Home Alabama drives me absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I've played it in every cover band I've ever been in, and I'm done with that. The other confectionery song, I've also played that in more or less every other cover band I've ever been in, and we won't be talking of that song. But that has got more than four chords in it, but we won't be speaking of that
Well,
one.
I can't believe I actually said that one on air because usually I say song which should not be named. Anyway, all right, so let's step right into it with a favorite that I know Tim will know. Everybody listening to this podcast probably will know, and everybody in the world does. It's "Let It Be" by the Beatles, which classically is C, G, A minor, and F.
Yeah, and this is a classic song. You know, it's maybe a power ballad even before power ballads were a thing. I mean, it's not lovey-dovey song, but it's the same kind of idea where it starts simple and then it builds and it's got a huge ending.
Well, and I think that that's kind of, well, when you look at the chord progression, that's literally, you know what I mean, Tim? The C, the G, the A minor, and the F play right into that. It's just like such a grand build. It's like, and I think you're right. It does lend itself to almost like a John Bon Jovi kind of power ballad, but in a Beatles formation. Like it's just got that intensity behind it. And as we've said, you know, he wrote this song about a dream of his mother. And something about she said, just let it be. And that's resonated with him. So that translates when you listen to the song, though.
It really does. Says, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. And Mary was his mother.
Which conveniently has a double entendre. So, you know, it was lucky for him that his mother was named Mary.
Yeah, I mean,
that's well for the song.
I mean, that's, you know, Paul McCartney. He's a musical songwriting genius.
Fair enough. All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is kind of a play off of our, I guess, my music news, because it's U2. It's With or Without You, which is D, A, B minor, and G.
Yes, a song that I've played at open mic nights, jam nights many times before. And it's one of those songs that was very easy for people to jump into, especially on the bass, because the guitar's got a lot of that stuff going on with the delay, and it's got that riff, the dong, bing, 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 and all that stuff going on. But like from a bass player's perspective, it's the same four notes all the way through.
Yeah, and when you think about the rhythm of like this song, now that you're saying that, I hear that. But it's kind of like a mix between rock and like ambient kind of music. Have you ever picked up on that? Like it has like that kind of feel where it goes back and forth.
Yeah, I suppose it does have a little bit of an ambient feel. I mean, later on in the career of U2, they sort of got into more ambient disco house, if you will.
Yeah, I don't know if that's just the way, the first word that came to mind to describe it, but it really does. Now, I did read when I was looking at this, Tim, this was U2's first number one hit in the U.S. ever, which is surprising to me that this was the first one. I would have thought it, because, I don't know, I wouldn't have thought it is, I thought they would have had something before that.
I think the US was a little late to the table with U2. They were certainly a bigger phenomenon in the UK, sort of late 70s, early 80s. And it sort of took the tail end of the 80s, really, for U2 to become a thing. And I think they had videos on MTV, which probably propelled them up.
That makes sense, though, because when I look back and think about what I knew about U2 as like a kid in the 90s and stuff, it was almost like it was more of a joke to joke about like Bono's like charity work and stuff. You know what I mean, Tim? And like, I don't want to say we should joke about that stuff, but it was more humorous, you know, and there was a lot of puns and like comedy specials about Bono's charity work than I ever heard their music.
Yeah, I mean, Bono has probably donated millions of dollars to great causes, been involved with a lot of fantastic things. But sometimes you hear him talk and you're like, for goodness sake, give it a break. Just play some music.
The pretension is high.
Oh, he's so full of himself. But I mean, you know, he's probably doing great work and good luck to you, Bono, but he is so full of himself.
The quote that I said, Tim, at the beginning of the thing, it's not like a showman to be humble, but for today I am, or whatever. That in and of itself was such a thing he would say. And they said, thank you for the honor or something like that. All right. So I'm not going to do this one. I can't bring myself to say another song he should not be named. So we're going to skip it. Just know there's another one on there, and it's about believing and going on a journey. We're going to say Take Me Home, Country Roads by John Denver, which is G, D, E minor, and C.
It does have a middle eight with some different chords. I know that because I used to play.
Generally, it's C, D.
Yeah, the bulk of it is easy, but there's a tricky middle eight piece. And the reason I know
Tim knows that.
The reason I know that is because we used to play a gig at Smith Mountain Lake. It was like a country club type thing at the lake for residents of this very fancy pants condo complex. And there was a young lady that always came on stage and always wanted to sing Take Me Home Country Roads. We'd never learned the song. That was the best part of it. We knew this gig was coming up and we never learned it. So what would happen, it would be me playing guitar and then one of the members of the band holding some phone in my face with the chords on it while she incredibly badly warbled the lyrics. I mean, she could not sing. I can see that
playing out.
Yeah, she could not sing. It was terrible. And she always wanted to do it. And the first couple of times we did it just for fun and people seemed to like it. And then it got to the third time there and we're like, we'd rather we didn't do that. And then like her husband or someone put $100 in the tip jar and was like, okay, well, let's do Country Roads.
Country Roads. Well, with the fact that Tim has a little extended knowledge, generally most people think it's G, D, E minor, and C. But you can play a bulk of the song with that. But yeah, what's funny about this song is that Tim's right though. In like if you've gone to a bar or what our friends over the pond would say a pub or like something local where there's a lot of like music that plays from like either local bands or like local bands are on break and you press play and songs are playing. Take Me Home, Country Roads come on, and it's like when everybody sings, like they like screaming at the top of their lungs. And I didn't realize that this was a universal experience because I say this. I was watching, I don't know if you've ever seen the website Skycam, but like it's where they have like different cameras in different places all over the world and you can watch it real time. Mm-hmm. Me and Brandy were on Zoom watching in Ireland, and it was a pub downtown at like Dublin, Ireland. I don't even remember, probably some very famous pub that I should know, and I kid you not, as we were watching, Take Me Home, Country Roads came on, and everybody started singing it there too. And me and Brady were kind of lampasted by that because we're like, apparently that's a universal experience.
I think so. It's like Dolly Parton's Tennessee Mountain Home, which has resonated with the people all over the world. If you've ever listened to that Dolly Parton podcast that came out a little while ago, there was the stories from people in like various places in Africa said that they really resonated with that song. So it must be a thing.
It's just weird. And like there's a debate because of where he says, and even like there's a part of it where he says like Shenandoah Valley. But then he says something about West Virginia, West Virginia. Mm-hmm. There's a debate for those of us who live in Southwest Virginia because Shenandoah Valley is in Southwest Virginia. But people in West Virginia want to say the song is about West Virginia. Like, it's that serious where we're at. So we kind of thought, that was more of a us thing. But then when we saw that, we're like, oh, wow. It's also like Sweet Caroline. Like, every time Sweet Caroline comes on, everybody has to sing it.
That's true. I mean, that's another universal one. I will say one thing about Country Roads. Because of that, most people think that I live in West Virginia, not Virginia.
Yeah. That's another problem with the song we have. And when you say Southwest Virginia, I don't know what people picture. It's easier for me when I'm like talking to people because I work at a national company. So I work with about 39 different states. If I say near Virginia Tech, that seems to kind of settle it. Because if you just say Southwest Virginia, they either think you live in like Charleston, West Virginia, or Virginia Beach. And there's like nothing in between.
Yeah, I say Blacksburg, Virginia Tech. And if people have no geographic knowledge of this region, I say, well, I'm south of Washington, D.C. And they're like, oh, okay.
That's about yeah. I always say I'm kind of down there in the corner, but closer to North Carolina than anything else.
There we are.
All right. Well, not that anybody needs to know that, but that's a debate. If Country Roads... Well, Take Me Home, Country Roads is about West Virginia or Southwest Virginia. All right. So another one that Tim may correct me on, since we know my knowledge is flawed. No Woman, No Cry by Bob Marley. C, G, A minor, and F.
Yeah, this is the same all the way through. This is a song that I've played at jam nights, open mics many times. We used to do this song in Dirty Rumors, which was a band that I had for a number of years with my friend Kirk Farmer. And this is a song that actually made it into the set that I used to play with Kirk. And it's such a good song. The live version is the definitive.
Yep.
There is a studio version, but the live version is the one that you typically always hear, and it is so good. I think it was actually recorded at the Hammersmith Odeon, if I remember correctly.
I think you're correct on that. That's what I've heard.
Such a good song, such a good version as well.
Well, and I feel like Bob Marley's not somebody who comes up very often in the podcast. And to his defense, he kind of had a career that was cut short, right?
Well, of course, yeah.
But for the time that he had hits after hits after hits, he was so popular. But I feel like sometimes he gets forgotten. I don't know why.
True. I mean, I will say in the realm of Bob Marley, the Marley Legend album for the casual observer really is all you need. I did get into the weeds of the rest of his discography a number of years ago. I acquired some of his music and I listened through it, and really, if you're a fan of reggae and you're a fan of Bob Marley, it's fantastic. But I found for me pretty much all I need in the realm of Bob Marley is on that Legend album. And every one of those
I could agree with that too.
Every one of those songs on there is a hit.
And that's the thing, though. He's one of those people that put out, well, I find it very interesting when I think about like the way singles come out now and the way they used to come out. I feel like, and maybe this is just perception and I could be wrong, but they would have so many more singles on every album. And now it's like one or two songs. I feel like more singles used to come out in like the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they did.
Well, I mean, it's because you were selling physical product, and also you wanted people to buy the album, because if you was a big fan, you would maybe buy one or two singles, and then the album came out, and the album would contain those singles and lots of other songs. So you'd buy it, and then another single would come out, and you already had it on the album, and you had that.
I guess you're right in that sense. They were going to have to, and they just want to promote the actual physical media so much more.
Yeah,
that's where they're making their money.
Now, really, in reality, anything that's on physical is a loss leader. And also, of course, streaming is a loss leader because nobody's really making any money out of that. Unless that you've cut a super sweet deal like Toto or something, who've got some amazing streaming deal and they claim they make more money out of that than they ever made on selling physical product. But everything now is a loss leader for the touring, which is why the tickets are so expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense. Look at Tim coming in logically. But anyway, this one is, I don't feel like we talked about this song or this person very much on this podcast at all, but I'm sure Tim's familiar with I'm Yours by Jason Mraz, which is G, D, E minor, and C.
This is a song I have never heard of.
You've never heard I'm Yours, don't need to come. Nothing?
Not a thing.
Okay, well, never mind then. Basically, though, it was Song of the Year that year at the Grammys. I know that. Have you heard of Jason Mraz?
The name, I've heard of the name. I wouldn't know what Jason Mraz looked like if he walked in the room.
Weird. He's notoriously like always behind an acoustic guitar and is usually wearing some type of like ridiculous looking like hat that's like, I don't know how to explain it. He has a very distinct look. It's like a fedora type hat. And like he's almost like comical when you see him sometimes.
I thought that was Bruno Mars had the fedora hat.
Well, he did too, but he wasn't playing the guitar. This is another fedora hat.
There's me buying guitars. I should be buying hats.
Okay, we're moving along. All right. So the next one is a song I actually don't know either, but we're bringing it up for a purpose. And Tim we both know this artist, but I don't know if we know this song. But he's what inspired this episode. This is Perfect by Ed Sheeran, or Ed Sheeran if you're Elton John. Mm-hmm. And this song is G, E minor, C, and D. So pretty typical. But remember, this is one of the songs he got in trouble for, and they tried to claim he copyrighted it, and he went into court. He played a bunch of songs with the same chord progression in court. So he kind of inspired this episode.
Yeah, because I remember that, because he was going to get sued by the whose estate was it again?
I don't even remember. Was it African American soul singer I can't remember.
Google it, Joy. Give it a Google.
Ed Sheeran. Lawsuit.
Joy's Googling.
Let's see here. Marvin Gaye. Yeah, I
There
was
we go.
right.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't Marvin Gaye because Marvin Gaye left us long ago. It was like his estate and family.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It was, yeah, because we talked about how badly his family has kind of mismanaged and handled that since he passed away. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so that was this. And so he kind of inspired this episode. Also, if it could be a motivator, someone is interested in learning an instrument and they think it's, you know what I mean, out of the realm of what they can and can't do, you'd be shocked how many songs you could play actually pretty quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't really know anything about Ed Sheeran apart from one song of his that I'm familiar with. I mean, do you know, he's one of these artists. I tell you, he's one of these artists. And I was felt the same way about Adele a few years ago, where you hear their name and you hear they're playing Wembley Stadium and you're like, are they famous enough to play Wembley Stadium? Because I have no idea.
But the funny part is like they're kind of like, I don't know, for lack of a better way to say it, they're like sleeper cells. Because then you go and look at their like actual money and you're like, oh my gosh, they're really popular. But like it's like they're all around me, but I'm never actually hearing them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't expose myself to that stuff. I tell you what it's like. So over Christmas, people talk about this Whamageddon, where you're not supposed to listen to Last Christmas, and you're trying to last the whole Christmas season without hearing Last Christmas. Now, I didn't play it deliberately, not for Whamageddon reasons, but I didn't play it just because, though it appeared on a few playlists I had, but it never came up.
Same.
But I was able to go through the entire Christmas until Christmas Day when it came up on a playlist. And that's very easy for me to do that. But then again, I'm not going in physical shops if I can help it. I don't watch the TV and I don't listen to the radio. So it was incredibly easy to do.
Tim literally can just, I don't know, what's the word? Corrugate like a whole life playlist for himself and never know what's happening. Fair enough. All right. Well, that's the only reason I put it on here. I don't know the song perfect. I have heard a few of his songs. Like I know the song A-Team, and a few others, but
A-Team or A-Team?
It's like A, like the letter A and then team.
I got excited. I thought he might have done a song about the A-Team. I mean, the A-Team is fantastic. We watch that all the time. B.A. Baracus and Murdoch and Face. Hannibal Smith.
Not the same, Tim. Not the same. I mean, I don't know. You could call Ed Sheeran and see if he'll do what about it. You know, he might.
I mean, I might be able to listen to Ed Sheeran if he did do a song about the A-Team. Maybe he can do one about Street Hawk as well.
Fair enough. All right. Well, because Tim mentioned this band not too long ago and how they've been able to make more money than everybody else, so I'll put it on there. This is Africa by Toto, and this is B, F sharp, G minor. Well, actually, it says it's got a G sharp and a G minor, so it's kind of a push and then E.
Yeah, it's got a I think the chorus follows the 4-chord thing, but it has a couple of different chords in the verses.
Yeah, there's a sharp and a minor for that G, which in and of itself kind of throws it out. But it's close. You could play like, what, 60% of the song with 4 chords?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Bohemian Rhapsody complexity. I mean, it is an absolutely fantastic song. And as I said to you before, there's somehow Toto, or basically Steve Lukather, to be completely correct, because he really is Toto at this point. He was saying that somehow his management, or I think they have a tour manager, but they don't have a manager or something. But anyhow, his people negotiated an incredibly good deal with all the streaming platforms. And he said streaming has been the best thing that's ever happened for us. He said, we make so much money on streaming. He said, exceeds anything we ever made selling CDs and records and singles and stuff. So he said, all these people complaining about streaming, he said, go and talk to your record company and get a better deal.
Well, the other thing about it, though, is I feel like they had a resurgence because everybody and their cousin did their own version of Africa, right, Tim? For like 3 minutes. And then it was used in those viral videos with Dax Shepard and his wife, Kristen Bell. And so I feel like they got a resurgence that probably put them back at the top of kind of people's minds. So that probably helped with the streaming side of it, too. And I don't know about you, but Africa's almost become like, I love rock and roll at this point for me.
Yeah, I mean, Weezer did a cover. It very famously did a cover
Didn't
of it.
Weird Al do a cover?
No. Weird Al is in the video.
Okay.
And he's playing the part of Rivers Cuomo. It is so funny.
Let's see. Who has done, I'm going to find out, a cover of Africa? Because I feel like there's a few of them like floating out there from various bands.
Yeah, certainly Weezer is the famous one.
All right, let's see here. Well, I know Weezer is the top one. Let's see. Weezer. Well, everybody just wants to talk about Weezer, but I swear there's Reliant K. That was the band I was thinking of because there was a band during like the early aughts that was like, you know what I mean, pop punk. They did a version. So I feel like different, like, so you've got Weezer's version, you got Reliant K version, and then like it sticks out to us that Weird Al was in the video. And then, like I said, the YouTube sensation, I feel like they get a little spiked for all that.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen Toto live in concert?
I have not. Have you?
Yes, I saw them at the Birmingham NEC in the early 2000s. It was, they were somehow free tickets I got through a friend of a friend of a friend. And they were not the best tickets. They're about halfway back on the side. And myself and Hog went. And
was it a good show?
Yeah, it was okay. The only thing that was annoying about it is that everyone in the band Toto is a virtuoso. And they all took long solos. And it was like, so you played, 3 or 4 or 5 really good songs. And then it's like, here, ladies and gentlemen, Simon Phillips on the drums. And then he plays this drum solo. And you're like, oh, come on. And then like Steve Lukather does a solo and the keyboard player does a solo.
You're like, okay.
And it's like, I like Steve Lukather's guitar solo because I'm a guitar player, but just as a general audience thing, if it goes on too long, it's really annoying. And especially the drum solo, because, I've been in bands with drummers who play drum solos.
Yeah.
And providing it's at the right point and you keep it short and to the point, people like it.
When someone overdoes it, it's so annoying.
But when it goes on and on and on, it just...
Or they do it too often.
Yeah, at some point it sounds like some people throwing a drum kit down the stairs. Honestly, that's what it sounds like.
A car backfiring, I think, is what I referred to at one time.
Because it doesn't have any melody. That's the thing. I mean, like when I saw Cozy Powell with the Brian May Band and the Hammersmith Odeon in 1993, he did a drum solo. But what he did a little bit like the drum solo-y stuff that people do. That he then played the 1812 Overture and did a drum solo over the top of that. And it was like, this is different and kind of cool.
But see, what I was going to say though is he played on what was familiar. I think the key is as like me, like I'm going to go watch, I don't know, let's just say Ed Sheeran. And I know his music. I'm familiar with his music. I'm going to see him play the songs that I know he plays because there's something familiar and something very comforting and I can sing along. You know what I mean, Tim? And then when it gets outside of that, it becomes boring. You just lose interest, not because it's not good, but because you're just not familiar with it.
Yeah, and then the thing is, like I said, drums are not a tuned instrument. So if you went along to an Ed Sheeran concert and his keyboard player takes a 3-minute keyboard solo, you're not going to enjoy it because you're not familiar with it.
But at least you know like the basic chords and how they sound.
It'll have melody. Yep. But whereas a drum solo, it's just, I don't know.
It just sounds like someone hitting rocks on something.
At some point. I mean, you can be the world's greatest drummer and if you're a drum person, if you're a drummer or you love drumming.
That's probably super into it,
and you're like, wow, how's that person doing that? They double bass pedal and a thing. But
the only exception might be Phil Collins. I might want to see him do a drum solo.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, you wouldn't see Phil Collins.
Yeah, but I meant like in his heyday.
I don't know if he would do a drum solo because he's very much a person who plays for the song.
That's true. I mean, fair enough. Okay. I'm just saying, I might enjoy if I saw him do it just because that's kind of one of his iconic, you know what I mean, instruments. But even then, it does start to get old if it's longer than like 30 seconds.
I would agree with that.
All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is one of the very first songs I learned to play, period. I think I learned it on the piano and I learned it on the ukulele. And that is Bad Mood Rising by Clearwater Revival. Because it's really just three chords. It's D, A, G, A over and over and over and over through the entire song.
I think it's D, C, and G. Yeah, G, 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 F, and there's an F in there. There is an F in Bad Mood Rising.
There we go. So there's one F, but through the main part of it, it's literally just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, it's D, C, G with an F. So that's your 4. It does have your 4 chords.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. That's what I meant to say. Okay. Yes, D. Yes, Tim's right. Okay, there's my 4th chord. But I mean, this is one of the first songs I ever learned, Tim. Like, it just goes back and forth over and over through the entire song.
It is. It's probably a song I've played at jam nights, open mics many times before. I've played it in bands before as
Does
well.
CCR register as much in the UK, you feel, when you were doing cover bands?
Not really, no. I mean, like here, every cover band does Green
Yeah.
River, which probably wasn't even a hit when it came out, but somehow it's on that
It's
rotor of.
true.
It's in that rotor of cover band songs for some reason. But no, CCR doesn't resonate in the UK the same way that it resonates here. And you know, it's funny, there's how some acts do and some acts don't. And like I've said many times before, the fact that Led Zeppelin resonates in the US, but it doesn't resonate so much in the UK, very bizarre.
And then the fact that Elton John became famous in the US before he became famous in the UK.
Yeah.
Make it make sense, guys. I don't know. And he even says that. He's like, I was more popular in the US before I made it in the UK. And it's usually, I mean, every other story you hear, right, Tim, is you really make it when you get to the US. The irony. But I will say, like, for me, the Up Around the Bend is probably like the definitive CCR song that sticks in my head. Or Looking Out My Back Door is also really easy to play on an instrument. It's probably only 4 chords, but don't quote me on that. I don't know off the top of my head. But like, and then Fortunate Son, has been used in every movie to indicate that someone's being recruited into the military for Vietnam.
Yeah, that's your standard. I'm sure John Fogerty is living off the royalties of that song alone.
It's true though. And like I mean, there's literally, I can think of at least 7 different scenes where someone's jumping off a helicopter and Fortunate Son about not having a silver spoon in your mouth is playing.
Well, another thing, like the song Rocking All Over the World, which is a John Fogerty song. Now, that is an iconic song in the UK for Status Quo. And most people in the UK have heard of Status Quo. They would probably know Rockin' All Over the World if you played it to them. It famously opened Live Aid, Rockin' All Over the World with Status Quo. But I didn't know it was a cover version until, I don't know, 25 years ago or something. I was like, really?
It's always so weird when you find something like that out too, because you're like, what? How did I never notice? Or how did I not know that? Yeah.
It's really bizarre. I mean, I've played that in bands so many times, assuming it was a Status Quo song. And then when I came here, or I started getting involved with various US things, and the internet opened up, and you're like, really? Really?
Yeah. That's the strangest feeling. And I tried to like think I have better music knowledge than the average person. So when I find that out, I'm like, oh man, maybe I've been hyping myself up for nothing.
Well, are you familiar also with Status Quo? Are you familiar with the song In the Army Now?
Yes.
That is a cover. That is a cover of a European act, complete note for note cover version.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, because it seems like it was, they make so many reference to it in America for literally like propaganda purposes, basically.
Yeah, In the Army Now. So I'm going to tell you who it's by because I forget the name of it. Bolland is the Dutch. It's a South African-born Dutch duo, Bolland and Bolland, and it was released in 1981. And the version that Status Quo does is a complete note-for-note cover. Like you listen to them side by side. It's almost exactly the same. And again, that blew my mind. And to this day...
I don't think I knew that till you said it.
Yeah, to this day, once in a while, I'll post the Bolland and Bolland video on Facebook or one of those things. And I'll say, just your biannual reminder, this was a cover version. And people are like, what?
So weird. Yeah, I would have never thought about that because I've heard, In the Army Now used in movies and like various things. Huh. Well, this one is one that is a cliche. If you ever picked up a ukulele, you had to learn it. I don't even know if Tim knows this song, but he's probably heard it because everybody and their cousin was playing on the ukulele for like 5 minutes. It is Riptide by Vance Joy, and it's A, G, C, and F. Well, it's A minor, technically.
Yeah, I don't know if I know that song. I think for me, Riptide is an 80s TV show.
It's just one of those ones that has, so when you're playing the ukulele, there's a thing called like the Hawaiian strum where you go down, down, up, down, 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 up, or whatever. It's a very like popular strum. And it creates that kind of ukulele sound wow. The Hawaiian sound of the ukulele you hear classically.
Yeah.
And then this one with the A, it's like A, G, C, and F. It plays right into that kind of happy and like the downstrum. I don't know. It just works perfectly. And everybody who's anyone picked it up and learned it on the ukulele. Like it's like your obligated first song. I don't know. Like, you know how like extreme more than words is everybody who learned to play the guitar in the 90s obligated song.
Yeah, and that's actually a tricky song to play because the strum it has a picking pulling pattern to it. And I recorded it a few years ago for my Lick of the Day series, which I did for about 8 months and then I gave up on. But I was making videos every weekend just for fun. And that was one of the ones that I did. And, and that pattern is actually pretty tricky to play if you've never played it before, at least.
I've never thought it was that easy, but it's just, you know what I mean? In every movie and everything, it's always extreme more than words. So anyway, all right. So this one is one that I learned to play this on the ukulele. I've sang this song quite a bit. There's more than one version. But this is Hallelujah, which was popularized by Jeff Buckley, whatever his last name is.
Buckley.
And then it's originally by Leonard Cohen. And I think there was another version by somebody else, but there's also been a lot of covers. But it's C, A minor, F, and G. Singing wise, it's quite, even though it's just that, it's quite difficult. It's a very difficult song to sing. There's a lot of just different changes that he does throughout that are hard for people, like going from your chest to your head to transition, and it doesn't sound harsh. Does that make sense? Like, you have to do that well a lot in this song, but playing it on the ukulele, it was quite easy.
Yeah, and I think the Jeff Buckley version really is seen as the definitive version, even though it is a Leonard Cohen song. I mean, I've listened to a lot of Leonard Cohen from the 1001 album challenge. And a lot of that stuff it's like Bob Dylan, where there are some gems, but a lot of it is like it's a slog to listen to. But when those songs are played by other people, they're often, you see the genius of the song through how someone else has interpreted it.
And that's like the passion that's behind Jeff's version, I think, is what everybody thinks iconically. Though I am kind of ruined because any kid who grew up in the generation that I grew up in and watched Shrek, there's famously a scene where he's upset, and this is what's playing in the background of Shrek. So now every time I hear Hallelujah, I think of Shrek. Just like All Star, all I can think of is the beginning of Shrek. So
yeah, I've never ever seen Shrek. I said I've been to the Shrek 4D experience at Universal Studios Hollywood, and I went into that cold, having no idea what Shrek was about.
I feel like we need a campaign to like get a review video of Tim watching Shrek and telling us about it. I really do. I'm gonna have to get Hannah on board to secretly sneak in a copy of Shrek in the house.
Yeah, I think you told me about the premise of Shrek a few episodes ago.
Yeah, but it's just iconic. It has a really good soundtrack too, Tim. Like, it's just, I can't believe there's people out there who live life without ever seeing Shrek.
I mean, I've done this many times just for my own entertainment. Like it says, Rolling Stone's top 100 movies of all time. And I go through the list, and 70 of them I've never heard of. And then of the remaining 30, I've probably seen 3.
Fair. Okay. Well, at some point, we're going to force Tim into watching Shrek and giving us a very analysis of it. But anyway, all right. So the next song we're going to talk about is a band that I forget exists, and I have a very weird thought process about them, and I don't know what it is, but it is Viva La Vida by Coldplay, and it's C, G, A minor, and F again. So
yeah, I get the impression that a lot of Coldplay music is very core, is quite simplistic in its sort of the chords that are used, but I think the genius of them is the arrangements that they put.
That's what I was gonna say. They will have like a violin and like an orchestra behind them, and it's bigger and ambient and larger than life. That's how they play it out. But the actual chords for the basis of the song are not quite hard.
Yeah, but I think that sort of speaks to being a very good song. The fact that you don't need 1,000 chords, you don't need modulations, you don't need key changes and stuff to make it great. You've got a very simplistic song, but through the genius of your songwriting and the way that you arrange the song with your instruments is how you make the song sort of be what it is.
And what's interesting is what is his name? Chris. Is this the guy who's the lead singer of Coldplay? Is his name Chris something? Am I wrong? Hold on.
It is Chris. I can't think of his last name though.
What is his last name? He was married to what's her face?
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Chris Martin. That's
Chris
him.
Martin,
God.
that's it. And they have a daughter called Apple.
They do. So he was saying that this song is written about the French Revolution. Like that's what it's inspired by. 'Cause, you know, like at the end, he's talking about Roman Catholic choir singing and stuff like that. And I know St. Peter won't call my name. And then like kind of like historical representation, which really kind of falls into the realm of what I feel like Coldplay is. I almost feel like they're more of like an orchestra or like a opera, like for lack of a better way, with a lot of their music, which doesn't always resonate with me. It sounds really cool, and I understand that means it's probably powerful and subway tip, but I'm not necessarily attracted to that music.
No, I mean it's like Coldplay for me is like U2 with all the meat taken out of it.
It's U2 Light, the great value version.
Yeah, it's almost like that. It's like Tesco value U2 in a lot of ways.
And maybe that's just because that's kind of the sound they're going for. I don't know. But there's somebody who doesn't stick out to me in any way, and I don't search them out, but I know who they are.
And you know who's like that as well? Snow Patrol. Are you familiar with Snow Patrol?
But I only ever knew one song from them.
Snow Patrol is like Coldplay, but with no guitars in it.
It's true. What was that one song they had, though, that like got like super popular for 5 minutes? Chasing Cars.
Yes.
That was it. And I remember they were there for like 30 seconds and then they just disappeared.
Yeah, I've played that in cover bands, Chasing Cars, and people liked it, but I can't think of another Snow Patrol song.
No, they were playing in that essence though. They were going for it. So the next one is one that is incredibly actually hard to sing, but I don't think I ever realized that it was like, I don't think I ever paid attention to what the chords were. This is Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson, and this is G, D, E minor, and C. And cool fact about this, this was co-written by Avril Lavigne. And it was, Clarkson's first hit after American Idol.
Yeah, and as we've said before, Kelly Clarkson is absolutely fantastic.
She can sing anything, and she has the ability to like mimic. So what I find interesting is she said something that Ariana Grande also said, and whether you like her or not, Ariana Grande has that ability to do covers really well, or like, you know what I mean, impersonations, like, and build on other people's sound. That's why she, became famous, and a lot of people compared her to Mariah Carey. She said, well, I practiced Mariah Carey my entire life. That's just what I learned. That's what I feel like Kelly Clarkson can do. Really good singers that can do like great covers. They have like almost like they're doing an impersonation in a way, and it's like a skill that I think trains their voice. Does that make sense, Tim? It's almost like it's like their warm up as a kid and stuff was learning to mimic other people's voices, and that has come through with their singing now, and why we say like Kelly Clarkson and Ariana Grande can do that.
Yeah, well, as Billy Joel is exactly the same, because as I may have mentioned before, when he writes songs writing songs for other people. And, there's many examples of this, but like Uptown Girl, he wrote that for Frankie Valli. Obviously it was his song. And like Big Shot, he wrote that for Mick Jagger. And if you listen to that song knowing that, you're like, yeah, he's actually sounding a bit like Mick Jagger in that song.
Yeah, he's got the swagger, for lack of a better way of saying it. That kind of like Jonas Fixation. I love Billy Joel. I've talked about him many times. He's one of my favorite artists. And I've heard him say that. And it's an interesting bit from like someone who like researches like vocals and like likes to learn about it. I feel like it was their way of training themselves without actually having a trainer. And they did it properly. And now it comes through, and it helps them to be able to do that now.
Sure.
Not everybody can do. I know we all try to mimic what we hear on the radio, but they did it, and they did it well.
Yeah, I made a career out of it too.
But anyway, but I mean, the same thing could be said about when you learn to play an instrument. How many times have you played a song, Tim? Played it for 30 seconds and then did it, and then played it for 30 seconds and then did it. Sure,
and I find that the guitar tone that I get these days, regardless of the gear or the guitar. It does sound like me. I'll be playing something. Hannah said, "Oh, that's you playing that," because she can pick out that it's me. But really, if you break it down, it's like Brian May's guitar sound with more gain, and that's it, really.
I've heard Tim say that before. That makes sense. That's cute though that she can pick it out. I never really thought about it, but it makes sense that she's heard it so much at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have necessarily the most distinctive guitar tone in the world, but it can be picked out.
There you go. All right, so let's see. How many? Speaking of Snow Patrol chasing cars, let's all here, guys. It's A, E, F minor, and D.
There we are.
So it said that it was the most streamed song of 2000. And the reason it was is because it was featured on a Grey's Anatomy episode.
Well, the question is, in 2000, was there any mechanism to stream music? I didn't even think
Was
that was
this
possible.
of the 2000s? Let me restate that. Not of the year 2000s. And it was because it was on a Grey's Anatomy episode.
Because I was thinking in 2000, I mean, that was Napster era.
Tim's like, I was still doing one of those things we can't talk about on this podcast.
Yeah, you know.
All right. But anyway, so of the 2000s, to be specific. All right. So the next one is a song that I actually think is really hard to sing well. And people will disagree with me on this, but I think that only very few people can sing this and sing the song well, but it sounds easy. But there's an interesting part where I think the singer, I don't think it's a backup singer. I think he's harmonizing with himself. And it creates kind of like a very, it sounds like he's singing one note, but I think he's like he's singing a harmony on top of his note. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because it's him and it's so close, it makes a very wide sound, for lack of a better way of saying it. And to be able to do that well, you have to be able to know how to do that. So that you'll know what I'm saying in a second. But the song is "Hey There, Delilah" by the Plain White T's, and this is D, A, B minor, and G.
Yeah, a song I've heard, but I'm not super familiar with. But I mean, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that vocal.
Yeah, because, you know, it sounds very much because he's like, "Hey there, Delilah, what's it like in New York City?" And then he does like a key change, "You're 1,000." And I don't know if it's a key. I can't pick up on what he's doing. I've never really looked at the sheet music, but it's either like there's like a key change or he's harmonizing with himself there, and you can hear like a switch. And most people, when they do the cover, and even myself, I can't figure out how vocally to do it. Mm-hmm. It sounds like there's a switch in your... But it's like a very like hard stop. Do you know what I mean, Tip? The switch between the sounds. And I think that there's either something production-y happening in the background, or he's harmonizing with himself and they layered it, or something. And so you never hear that when you hear kind of the live version, and it creates like a miss, if that makes sense. Like I just missed that part. And so I never think it comes out as well.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Who knew that I had such strong thoughts on people's live versions of it? I don't know why. Have you ever had something like that, though, Tim, that you feel very strongly about? You're like, but this, I don't know why, but every time I hear it, it bothers me.
Yeah, there's on the Queen album, Innuendo, there's a track on it. Let me pull it up, because it's not the Hitman. Which one is it? Innuendo. I Can't Live With You, which is track 4 of that.
Okay.
And that is a great song. The whole album, top to tail, is superb. Maybe my favorite Queen album of all time.
Okay.
As you're getting towards the end of the song, Brian May is playing like a lead under the vocal. And and he plays the same figure like 3 times. And on the 4th one, he bends the note ever so slightly flat. And it bothers me every time.
Fair enough. And it's like, it's such a small little thing that you're like, there's something there. I can't figure it out.
It's a millisecond. But when I hear that song at the very end, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
All right. Well, another one that we talked about, and I find very funny because, like, this was, you know, probably the most iconic track of the 1990s in Britain. But this is Wonderwall by Oasis, and it's E minor, G, D, and A.
Yeah, it does have a capo, I think, on the 1st or 2nd fret if you play it as per the record. But this was one of these songs.
You probably could play it open, though, and it still works, though.
It still works, but if you want to pitch it up like it sounds on the record, you need to use a
that makes sense.
Or a capo. Sorry, I've been living in the United States too long. A capo, not a capo.
To be fair, though, it does have it is K-A-P-O, right?
C-A-P-O.
C-A-P-O. Okay, so I mean, it does have an A there, so probably the British way is probably the proper way, because it would make a K sound.
That's true. But how would you pronounce this word?
Okay.
P-I-E-Z-O.
P-I-E-Z-O.
How do you pronounce that?
Paizo?
Yeah, so that is the US way of saying it. In the UK, we say piezo.
Pie. Oh, I wonder why I default to pie instead of P.
Yeah,
okay,
it's an acoustic guitar pickup. And when sort of YouTube started becoming a thing, and they would look at guitar reviews and stuff, and people are talking about a piezo pickup, and it's like, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, you mean a piezo pickup?
I've had the same experience, though, like when I hear, like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, that's what they're talking about. Because it's like, wait, what are they saying?
Well,
right.
the classic one for me, the very first time I ever went to the United States, it was in August 2004, and I went to New York City. We was
Hmm.
getting a cab back from the city to the airport on the way home, and the
Yeah.
guy in the cab, the cab driver, had a radio on. And as per US radio, there's a commercial every 10 minutes. So it's
Yeah.
a 40-minute drive to JFK or whatever it was.
So you're listening to 30 minutes of commercials.
Yeah. And there was a car dealership on there, and they were talking about Nissans and Hyundais.
Ah, I knew this was
Yeah.
coming. Okay.
And at the time, I was like, what brand is this? What are you talking about? And it was only sometime way after the fact. I was like, oh,
Nissan.
Nissans and Hyundais.
Nissan. Well, what's funny is there's a ramen noodle brand that's like black in like package. It has like red lettering, and it's Nissan, but it's Nissan when you hear him talk about it from Asia.
Yeah.
And so I was like, for the longest time, I was like, I knew that's where Tim was going when he said it was a car because I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
But that's funny. I don't
Yeah.
know. There's probably some examples I can't think of off the top of my head. No, what's worse is when you have Cajun family members. Because they mix French and they like when they talk, there's no spaces between their words. One word is like a whole sentence. Does that make sense? But there's no vowels. And I guess that's very similar to French too, right? And they do like kind of like a Creole where they mix a little bit between French and English. And with my Cajun family members, when we went to Louisiana, you think that people are exaggerating that, but like they're not. They're just not. There would be people you would hear, and like my mom would be like, "But your dad can introduce you to people, and you won't even think they're speaking English," and she was exactly correct. And they would just stare at you, and it was the strangest experience. But anyway, that's I think one interesting thing. I know like you've got different dialects and things like that in the UK, of course, especially in Britain. But America it's such a big country. There's like 74,000 dialects.
Oh, 100%.
Anyway, all right. So let's see.
You've probably got
Here's
time for one, maybe two more.
okay. I have to say this one because we've had the great debate of numbers bands. It's Blink 182, or if you're Tim, it's Blink 182,
Yep.
and it's all the small things.
All the
which is
small things. That would be a G, an F, and a C all the way through.
it says there's an A minor as well. Somewhere's in there. Tim's
Um,
like, let's see. Let's give it a Google on another thing and see if they lied to me. I didn't look. I looked all this up, guys. But yeah, well, maybe Tim's right. I guess if you're playing, it's C, G, F power chords.
Yep.
But there is a version where he adds an A. Okay, so there's two versions, but Tim's correct. If you're playing to what you hear on the radio, there's only three chords.
Yeah, he goes G, F, C, 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 C,
Yeah, I remember playing it. Where do they put the A minor at then?
I don't
Now
know.
I need to know.
I don't know where that would be because there's
Minor.
even the breakdown in that is the same chords.
Let's see. Maybe it's just lying to me. I will say this was one of the songs that helped me learn to do a G because that was like, I don't know why my fingers, that was probably the hardest chord for me to learn. That and barring a fret, I still can't do well. I can't do that at all, Tim.
But barring is a knack. Once you've got it, it opens up the whole neck of the guitar.
Terrible at it. Terrible at it though, because you have to have like the exact amount of pressure at all the points. Do you know what I mean? And if any amount of pressure is off from the slightest, then you get a weird wonky sound. You have to have like that perfect. But I feel like Tim's right. Once you get it, you get it. But it takes some building, and I don't have it.
And the other thing is that it hurts. And when you're first doing it, you try and play an F chord, it really hurts.
It hurts physically, and it takes a long time for your hands to like build that muscle, I guess, for lack of a term. The other thing is when I was first learning to strum, because you're not using a pick, right? Well, you can, people with the ukulele, but I was actually using my finger. I traditionally, most people strum with like their top finger, but for some reason, when I was starting to learn to go back up, I learned that I was better with my middle finger. And when I say the side of my finger for a year was split open, Tim, it was split open. Mm-hmm. Like for the first year of playing, it was just completely open 20% of the day, every day.
Yeah, I have when I play guitar, I predominantly play with a pick.
Yeah.
And where I hold the pick is my first finger and thumb, and I hold the pick. But my first finger and nail brushes against the strings to some degree while I'm strumming. and my nail wears at a funny shape. To Joy, you can't really see, but it wears at a funny shape as a result of that. And if I come back from like a practice session of several hours or a long gig, it's actually worn that away.
We could say, like, I swear that, like, dent in the side of my fingertip came in after I played this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I swear it, like, put a dent in the side of my finger for the first year I was trying so hard to learn to play.
Yep.
But anyway, all right. So, Tim said we had time. We're just going to throw out one more song and then we will end this podcast. And it will be, let's see if there's a good one here. We'll go with Torn by Natalie, and I don't even remember how do you say her last name, Tim?
Natalie Imbruglia.
Every time I say it differently. I don't know what's true. Now, I will say this one is not necessarily correct, but it's E, B, C minor. No, C minor, yep, and C sharp, and then it's an A. So you have both played in this. Go away, bug.
And it's
There's
also
a bug flying for me.
And it's also a cover version as well.
Oh, yeah. Who was the original, though? I don't remember.
I can't remember. I remember when it came out, most people hadn't heard the original and were surprised to hear it was a cover.
That's what we'll end the people with. It is...
And she was also on Neighbours as well.
Edna Swap? It's EDNASWAP.
I have no idea. Sounds like something you'd throw your Mercedes keys into a bowl or something. I have no idea.
I have no clue. That was such a weird... Edna's, where are they from? Oh, they're Danish.
Oh, there you go.
There's probably some proper way you're supposed to say that. I'm being yelled at by our Danish listeners, but anyway. Well, we did this, and apparently I only had 2 songs that were incorrect on my list, but I was pretty close. Most of them you could play about 70%, and one of them I added an extra chord. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to leave the people with, Tim?
Firstly, keep warm, though it may be warmer by the time you get this, and just be kind to everyone that you meet.
I agree. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.